Today on Millennial,
we can give refunds, and we're happy to.
Yeah, we've done it for sure.
If your reasoning is good. I mean, you can't just ask us.
You can't just be like, Andrew, you haven't told enough stories about simming lately. I feel I've been shorted. I'm still honestly flabbergasted by the judge's decision to allow this entire trial to be televised, especially when you look at some of the evidence that was brought forth. We shouldn't be allowed to listen. You know, you're talking about people at their lowest. And the fact that we now get to listen to that and use that as entertainment or water cooler talk is kind of gross. The January 6th commission hearings kicking off this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
I just love that they're televising it during prime time.
The committee is going to be showing some previously never before seen evidence.
Coming up, Meryl Streep will introduce some previously never before seen footage. Welcome to Millennial, the home of fake adulting but real coffee talk. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
A new study about coffee finds that those who drank moderate amounts were up to 30% less likely to die during the study period than those who didn't drink coffee.
Woo!
It's the latest in a long line
of very exciting news.
Yeah. I think, Laura, you said something about being immortal.
Yeah, I must be. I mean, I drink 3 to 4 cups a day, sometimes more. I have a problem, but I do have a question about this. The participants who were drinking more coffee were less likely to die. Does that mean somebody died during the study?
During the study period, yes. I think
okay. Oh my God.
Fewer people died who drank coffee than didn't. I think that's the takeaway. This was a pretty big study. There were 170,000 people in the study between the ages of 37 and 73. Coffee drinkers in the study enjoyed 1.5 to 3.5 cups of coffee per day, even with a teaspoon of sugar. The data was inconclusive, though, for those who drank coffee with artificial sweeteners. So if you drink your coffee with Splenda or one of these others, you might still die. I apologize. But researchers warn that they cannot say coffee itself lowers the risk of dying. However, previous research has linked coffee consumption with a lower risk of Parkinson's disease, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and liver and prostate cancers. So this is just another good study about coffee.
This brings me much joy, as we've discussed prior.
Same. I thought we could talk about quickly, how does everyone here take their coffee?
Oat milk only. No sugar. I quit sugar in my coffee probably a good 10 years ago. It was a little strange to get used to. It took maybe a week. But after that, I didn't look back again. I see people going to Dunkin' and these other coffee shops, and they pour their own sugar in, and oh my God, it's terrifying. They just turn the bottle upside down and hold it there for 10 seconds.
I toggle back and forth between black or with milk only. Milk and any creamer, even if it doesn't have any sugar added, already is going to have some sugar in it. My favorite creamer, which I will take a minute to recommend as my recommendation for the week, is Nut Pods. I love Nut Pods. I've been such a huge fan of that company for so long. Super good. And if you want something slightly sweetened to kind of like phase yourself out, if you're looking to do that, or even if you just like sweeter coffee, they do sell sweetened versions of some of the flavors now, which is good. But it's really nice. It's lactose free, which is great because I'm mostly lactose intolerant, as we've discussed before on the show.
I saw you hand modeling nuts. I mean, Nut Pods.
Yes.
Ooh,
on your Instagram the other day.
I was so excited. They sent me. They have a collaboration.
Yeah,
they have a
Influencer alert.
with Chamberlain
alert.
Coffee. Yeah, and I was very excited to get that package because, you know, I will take any of the free Nut Pods they want to send my way.
Oh, that was a great Instagram story, too. You got Pam's painted nails and the slowly pouring
my
the
nails
nut pod.
look great. Shout out to Hala Taco, my other recommendation from a few weeks ago.
One of our listeners thanked you for that in our Facebook group.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you
That's
saw
fantastic. I didn't, but I'll have to go look. I'm so glad that they are enjoying those polishes, too.
Somebody said you always give the best recs, and I agree. It's
Yeah,
always new
thank
stuff
you.
that I've never heard of. Pam's down with the people, y'all. She's like She knows what's up.
She does.
Me and Laura, like, we don't know anything new these days.
No, I'm like, oh God, what have I been watching lately? What reruns? I guess I'll recommend Mad Men for the 50th fucking time.
Yeah, exactly. I've literally been rewatching Seinfeld lately, like actually trying to watch every episode. So anyway, I actually have a related recommendation this week, and it's not as exciting as Pam's Nut Pod recommendation, but it's more of a challenge for everybody. Try to stop adding coffee to your sugar. I guess some people do add coffee to their sugar. Try to stop adding sugar to your coffee. Try it for a couple days. See how it goes. Of course, that sugar's not healthy, so you should really try to wean yourself off of it.
Do you want to know how I decide whether this is so bad, whether I add milk or to my coffee or not? It's if I have had enough food before I drink the coffee, because I don't want black coffee on an empty stomach.
Oh,
so right now I'm in between. Obviously, like it's not quite dinner time, but too late for lunch, so I have milk in my iced coffee.
Laura said she does 3 to 4 cups a day. Pam, how many cups a day for you?
Also about 3 to 4 cups, but I've cut back a lot. I can feel you judging me already.
No, I'm not judging you.
I used to drink so much more in college. So much more.
Me too.
We just want to let our listeners know. I drink 2 to 3 a day. I do 1 French press of coffee a day. I don't know how much is actually in that. It works out to about 2 cups of coffee.
So basically, we're getting this on the record so that whichever one of us dies first, we can test this study, right? Like,
yes.
I mean, between being avid coffee drinkers and consumers of CBD oil, I feel like, you know, we're doing pretty well according to all these studies.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna live forever. So
yeah. Don't take this study too seriously. We see studies like this from time to time, like I said about coffee. And then there's always studies saying something's good for you. Then there's another study saying it's bad for you. 2 glasses of wine a night is great for you. Oh, 2 glasses of wine a night is really bad for you. Watch out. Sitting's bad for you. Standing's bad for you. Everything's bad for you. Everything's good for you.
Yeah.
It just all cancels itself out.
Yeah, and a good point to bring up here, it's something James is bringing up in our Discord, is that these research studies can be misleading because oftentimes they will find a correlation with, say, drinking coffee and living longer. But just because there's a correlation between those two things does not mean that there's causation, like that drinking coffee will definitely do that. So it's fun.
Fair.
It's fun to banter about it, but it is a valid thing to bring up. Because, yeah, you're right, Andrew. It feels like every time you turn around, there's some other miracle product that's either going to extend your life or there's some, thing that if you eat, you're going to get cancer and die in 2 days. Like, you really can't win.
Right.
I have been seeing this story pop up every now and again for the past couple of months or so. And if you're on the book talk side of TikTok, perhaps you've also heard people talking about this. So the long and short of it is that a lot of people are seemingly taking advantage of Amazon's very generous return policy when it comes to ebooks. So as I said, over the course of the past few months, we've seen a lot of people speak up about this on the internet. And last week, there were a few authors that took to Twitter specifically, essentially just begging readers not to return the ebooks they buy off of Amazon after they finished reading them. And this is something that it had never crossed my mind to even think of doing. So it's kind of crazy to hear that this is common practice for some people. Something important to note, because I noticed that in the replies, a few were a little confused. This doesn't apply to any books read or returned through Amazon's Kindle Unlimited subscription, because authors get paid in a different way with that when you subscribe through that option. And it also does not apply to any ebooks that are listed free of charge on Amazon, because those things exist as well. So we're talking about ebooks that you pay for flat out. All of this kind of started as a result of users on TikTok framing this as a hack of sorts for you to read free books and then get your money back, which again is kind of messed up because libraries exist for a reason. You can get a lot of stuff through the library for free. And so there's no need to do this. And then what it really messes up is that self-published authors specifically end up having to return royalties. So they come out negative in some cases if people do this too often. So we have a couple of tweets here. These are the ones that I saw, though I'm sure that there are more out there. The first one comes from an author named Lisa Kessler, who said, just a reminder that Amazon is not a library. When you read and return a book, it costs the author. It's June 1st, and I owe Amazon at the moment because people are reading through the Muse series and returning the books when they finish them. Authors need to eat too. And then fellow author Kate Bromberg tweeted, every time you return an ebook at Amazon, the authors charge back more than what they were paid for the sale. Yes, that means we could owe Amazon at the end of the month. Since TikToks went viral saying it's okay to return ebooks, most authors' returns have skyrocketed. Reading and returning books is stealing. If you want free books, try the library app, Libby, among others.
Wow. That's really shocking. I think most people would not guess that an author, if the returns exceed the sales, have to actually pay Amazon. But I'm trying to figure out, Pam, how exactly does this add up to the point where the author would owe Amazon? Where's the discrepancy there?
So I was hoping to find more information on that. I couldn't find anybody giving a specific number or how this is calculated, which I guess makes sense because people tend to be fairly cagey about finances and how things work. But it's unfortunate because I think it would go a long way if authors that were suffering from this were a little bit more blatantly transparent about just how much this takes out of their own pockets. But from what I was able to deduce, they get paid a royalty every time they sell a book. And so then when the book gets returned, Amazon asks for that royalty back. And this affects specifically self-published authors as well, because they're not going through a publishing house.
Okay.
But there are a lot of self-published authors out there, especially in the romance genre, and those books tend to sell really well in terms of ebooks as well.
I still don't understand. I mean, what you were just describing, though, was a 1-to-1 ratio. Like, if they get royalties and then they have to pay them back, they don't owe Amazon. You know what I mean? They don't go into debt.
Yeah, I guess those people just assume that money is going to stay in their account. And so then it feels like they're going into debt because they have to return that money. Well, like I said, it was kind of hard to find, specific information with regards to just how this breaks down.
Maybe they legally can't share that information.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, I would say maybe let's think about it this way. Not that Patreon works this way, thank God. But let's say that somebody reached out to Patreon and was like, hey, fuck Millennial. I don't want to pay for this anymore. And Patreon came to us and was like, hey, you have to refund that person's last month after we've already received the funds. You know what I mean? We get paid on a monthly basis. And then imagine having to give that money back when you assume that money was already spoken for.
Yeah. In case anyone's curious, people can actually not do that. They have to come to us and say, we want a refund. Patreon will not give patrons refunds. Right. We can give refunds, and we're happy to.
Yeah, we've done it for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If your reasoning is good. I mean, you can't just ask us.
You can't just be like, Andrew, you haven't told enough stories about simming lately. I'm new to Patreon. I don't understand what simming is. I had to answer the question to get into the Facebook group. I feel as though I've been shorted.
I would feel bad in that scenario and give you a refund.
You would?
As long as they promise to go buy some donuts with that money.
To that point, though, some of the replies to these tweets were definitely not it. There was one user who replied, IDK, I think you should be able to return products you don't like. The thread talking about how if you've read it all, you shouldn't be able to return it. I mean, I've definitely consumed media to see what all the hype is about, only to be resolute in disliking it.
Okay. If you go to the movie theater and you see a movie and you don't like the movie, are you going to the concession stand and asking for a refund?
That's a good point.
I'm sure
Definitely
some people
not.
do that, but come on. If you consume a piece of work, you have to pay for the privilege of consuming it, whether you liked it or not.
Mm-hmm.
In the example of the movie theater or even reading a book, you paid for that. You paid for a service. You did receive that service. Now, in a movie theater, if half the screen wasn't working, if all the lights were still on, you paid for a service and did not receive the service you expected. So that's grounds for a refund.
Yeah. And what this really comes down to is some loopholes or things that need to change in Amazon's return policy for ebooks specifically, which clearly need to be reevaluated. So as it stands right now, the return window for ebooks in the United States is 7 days, and in the UK it's 14. That's a pretty generous window, even if you accidentally one-click buy. I mean, at that point, if you accidentally buy something, you should be returning it right away, right? So, and then in addition to this, some readers have also reported that there's a bit of a glitch on Kindle, which gives readers the option to return their ebooks when they go to remove it from their library. And that pops up regardless of whether they've owned it for past this return window date. So that's making it even easier for people to try out this hack that's not really,
Sounds like a big glitch. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the problem sometimes with TikTok and other social media platforms for that matter. You hear about these hacks and you get so excited about them because, I'm going to save $1 that you try them out, and then you're screwing over creators or small businesses maybe. And to some extent, it's not your fault. You're not thinking about how this could affect the author because the TikTok, the Facebook post, whatever, is not sharing that information with you about how this negatively impacts people.
Also, Amazon is really good too about giving free previews for books.
Yeah.
So you can totally read a chapter or two before even buying it to see if that book's going to be for you. I really just don't see how there's any excuse for anybody to return a book that they already purchased with that in mind, especially when clearly people are doing this after they've read the whole thing.
Yeah. Do you think that for people, maybe there's a disconnect when it comes to digital services because it's not like a physical, tangible thing? They're not seeing the connection between that and the author who depends on that money and understanding how what they're doing is actually causing harm.
Yeah. Maybe also, too, because of the subscription world that we're in, we're just kind of used to like loading up something on Hulu and then trying it for 20 minutes and then bailing out and not feeling like we lost anything because we didn't pay for anything extra. And then you kind of carry that mindset over to Amazon and Kindle. And it's like, all right, I tried it, but I want my money back. I don't want to pay extra for this, just like I'm not paying extra on Hulu.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point, or maybe a service like this already exists and I just haven't heard of it, where it's like weekly installments of chapters, like say a new book is coming out and you have to remain a subscriber in order to get the new content or the latest installment?
We're probably not that far off from there. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the next frontier.
True. I was going to say, this is not like a traditional novel, but I know that like the Heartstopper, which was originally a web comic, was being released in installments. So,
okay.
Although that's not quite the same because I want to say that was free, but the point is that it was coming out in installments before it was published into a book. So
I agree with the points that we're making here, though I will also say that is part of life. Like sometimes you buy things and then sometimes you return them. I'm not saying it's fair or right what these people are doing, but I can also understand why some people are like, well, I'll return it just like I return anything else. You try a new mop from Target and you don't like it, so you bring it back.
Yeah, but and I understand what you're saying, and I agree that I think that's the mentality that a lot of people have, but the difference is at that point, you as a consumer are making a refund of a physical product to a large corporation. They, oftentimes stores like that, and we can talk about this later, they tend to, for items that are returned that are still usable, they sell them to like Big Lots, for example. Mm-hmm. So they still see some kind of financial gain from that product, even if it's returned to them. But if you're returning an ebook, it's not as though Amazon is going to say, I'm going to take this item and sell it to somebody else. It's an ebook. You can't do that.
Yeah, there's like an infinite number of copies, right? So there's no, like, Amazon doesn't lose any skin for having those in their inventory.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of other companies, obviously Amazon's Kindle store isn't the only store that has kind of crazy return policies. And I know that, Andrew, you wanted to talk about Costco?
Yeah, I just wanted to celebrate that Costco has the most open-ended, loosey-goosey, flexible return policy of all time. You can return something to Costco months, in some cases years, after you buy it from there, and they will take it back, no questions asked. I am in the Costco subreddit because I'm a Costco super fan. I'm the type of person who wants to buy a Kirkland signature t-shirt. They will continue to allow you to return things so long as your returns do not exceed your purchases at Costco. And they're keeping track of all this because as a Costco customer, you're also a Costco member, and they track you with a membership card. I bought a computer monitor from Costco last year, and then Apple announced they were coming out with a new one. I returned the old computer monitor to Costco 6 months after I bought it, and they took it back.
Wow.
But Costco will take anything back. And it's nice sometimes because sometimes you don't want to sell it on eBay or deal with Facebook Marketplace or whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certainly valid reasons for returning things, but some of that just sound like returning something that's over a year. I think that's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it feels, I mean, probably what they're doing is they're just doing the math and they realize that they're making more money off of that model than they're actually losing. I doubt that it's Costco, that their first priority is to, provide excellent customer service. They wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't profitable for them, right? In the long term.
Right. They want to keep you a member forever.
Yeah. But man, sometimes I can talk about my experience. I worked at Target when I was in high school, and I wore a lot of different hats at Target. I did a lot of different things there. But one of those things was I worked the guest services desk, which was the returns desk. And some of the shit people would try to bring back was astounding to me. Underwear that they had worn. It's one thing if you buy a pack of underwear or if you buy something from the lingerie department and it's clear you haven't opened it and worn it. But there were legitimately people who would take that stuff home, try it on, not like it, and bring it back. And I was always like, no.
That's a big no-no. Underwear, undergarments, yeah.
That's disgusting. Sometimes food, like people would buy food and take it home and not use it in enough time. So it'd go bad and then they'd bring it back and try to return it. And it was like, well, Karen, why didn't you just use your spinach last week?
You love spinach, Karen. We can see that in your membership history. You buy spinach all the time. Yeah.
And then there would be people who would try to bring stuff back that was so old that it was no longer even in our systems. So when you're trying to look up an item and you can't find it because the store hasn't carried it in over 2 years, people get surprisingly pissed about that kind of thing. And we're not even talking high dollar items here. We're talking like things that cost between $10 and $30. People would get super pissed about not being able to return that stuff. So it's just wild. And I'm sure anybody who has ever or is currently working retail has some similar stories.
If I buy something and I was running around and I was going too fast and didn't check the expiration date, and then I realized that it's like, the next day or something, I feel like that's on me. So like, I won't return that, but I'm much more likely to return clothes and stuff like that if I just don't like it when I get home as much as I did in the fitting room.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense too. Mm-hmm. As long as you didn't like wear the clothes for, a couple of weeks and clearly put them through the wash and then try. I've seen that too.
That's not good. Yeah.
Or people buy like a suit for a wedding and then return it after.
You can rent that stuff too if you're, buying somebody that wears suits. Like it's, Yeah.
I will say this is with clothes. That's why I really like Stitch Fix. I don't keep like a regular membership with them because that would get pretty expensive. But every now and then when I want to refresh my wardrobe, I'll get, a couple of Stitch Fixes because they make it so easy to return the things that you don't want to buy, and it gives you the chance to try them on in the comfort of your home. My days of like going out clothes shopping, I think are behind me. I don't enjoy it. I find it exhausting. So I would just rather the clothes come to me and then I curate what I want to keep and send the rest of it back.
Honestly, that's a great recommendation.
Yep.
And it's like a little surprise gift.
Yeah,
You never know when it's going to show up. So
what's your offer code, Laura? Because damn, that sounded like an ad.
Really? Man, maybe they'll reach out to me next. Pam got her, influencer moment.
Listen.
Maybe I'm coming up next.
It's not sponsored, but it could be.
Yeah, you listening, Stitch Fix?
Listening, Stitch? I'm actually, the shirt I'm wearing right now is from Stitch Fix. Yeah. Wink, wink.
I think we've all tried Stitch Fix here. I enjoyed it when I tried it too. I haven't tried it in a couple of years though. I'm sure that their inventory's only gotten better. But I also have a few good pieces.
One giant ad. I'm sure their inventory has only gotten better at stitchfix.com/
Please
Chloe,
sponsor us, Stitch Fix.
Tweet Stitch Fix right now with a link to this stream and let them know we're talking about them and maybe they'll sponsor us. I see them sponsoring influencers. I like them too. They have been good.
Sponsor us.
But we've also, and we can cut this part out if they agree to sponsor us by the end of today's episode. We've also spoken about how they do a lot of fast fashion and their clothes fall apart, right? So, I mean, we have spoken about that. I know we have.
Yes. There is no way to be completely ethical in late stage capitalism, is all I will say to that.
This is all a joke. Well, Laura is going to speak about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and that whole shit show, pun intended, in a moment. But first, here's a real sponsor who always does have our back, and they don't let us down. They are always good to us, and they make great products. Felix Gray. If you ever find yourself going, my eyes, during the day when you're staring at a screen, Felix Gray's glasses are here to help you. They make great looking eyewear that improves daily screen time. And not only do they do that, but these blue light glasses beat all the others. Felix Gray lenses filter 15 times more blue light that can make screen time tough on eyes and disruptive to sleep. You can check out their site to see the technology behind them and why they work so well. If you're going, my eyes, then you might also be experiencing headaches, blurry vision, dry and tired eyes, and trouble sleeping. Eye strain and headaches have always been my biggest issues from staring at a screen, and I can always count on my Felix Gray glasses to take care of the issue. In fact, I started working really early this morning, like 6:30 a.m. I was on my computer, still half asleep, and my eyes very quickly started hurting. And luckily, I just threw these on and boom, the problem was solved. And this was something I hadn't even thought about before, putting them on right in the morning. They've been one of our sponsors for a while now, and I think many of you have been checking out their glasses because this is a huge problem that everybody has. If you haven't checked them out yet, please do, because they truly do help. For the best blue light glasses on the market, use our URL, felixgrayglasses.com/MILL. Non-prescription and prescription glasses are available. Check them out now, felixgrayglasses.com/MILL. That's FELIXGRAY glasses.com/MILL. Free shipping, free returns, free exchanges, felixgrayglasses.com/MILL.
All right. As Andrew plugged, we're going to jump into a discussion about the trial that has taken the entire internet by storm for the last few weeks. Johnny Depp officially won his defamation lawsuit against Amber Heard on Friday. But the internet has been hooked on the case for quite some time. And what we're not here to do today is discuss who we think did what or try to argue the case one way or another, because it feels like that's what every other piece of content about this case has been like. And we honestly know that there's no interpretation of the events between Depp and Heard that will make absolutely everyone happy. We, of course, have our own opinions, but we're also going into this knowing that it's impossible to have a conversation about this issue without getting shit on because somebody's not going to like what you have to say. So I just preface this conversation by saying, we know some people are going to have feelings. I'm sure we're going to get some emails. We're prepared. But really, we want to talk about how this has manifested online, what it means for our culture, and what, some potential interpretations of the way the case came out point towards. Just to set the stage, something that I feel is really important to highlight is that this was a defamation suit pursued by Johnny Depp in response to Amber Heard writing an op-ed in which she alleged domestic abuse and assault. She did not name Depp in the op-ed, although it is widely accepted that she was referring to him. And I think based on the timing of when it came out, with everything that had already come out about her allegations, it's safe to say that's who she was alluding to. What's been kind of aggravating about watching all of the coverage, whether it was mainstream media or TikTok coverage or Twitter feeds, is that people forgot what this case was even about, that it was a defamation suit. And the outcome seems to have spurred this interpretation that now Johnny Depp is 100% innocent and he was actually 100% the victim, and that there's no sort of more nuanced take on what might have happened in this relationship, when that's not what this trial was about. It was simply the defamation suit. Now, I will say there are points in the trial that don't make Amber Heard look great. She didn't have the greatest defense, and there are some inconsistencies in her account of events at times. But I think that we need to remember that Depp actually lost a case in the UK a couple of years ago, where Amber Heard actually testified on 14 instances of alleged abuse at his hand, 12 of which the judge ultimately determined were credible, and rose to the occasion of siding against Depp in that case. That's just kind of a very general TLDR of what's been going on over the last few years. I know that this has been a case that we've all been pretty familiar with, since we're all also active in the Harry Potter fandom. And of course, there's been some drama in the Potter fandom, what with Depp originally being cast in the Fantastic Beasts franchise, and then later stepping back from that in order to pursue his case against his ex-wife.
It was after that ruling in the UK that he lost that WB asked him to step down from the Fantastic Beasts franchise. So he lost that role really due to the verdict in that case. At least that must have been a significant factor, because the timing was perfect.
I think part of it was that he had indicated that he was not done pursuing this case, because that the case in the UK was about the son. I think it was referring to him as a wife beater. Yes. And the son had to go to court and prove that calling him that was valid. And the judge ultimately determined, because 12 of these 14 instances that Amber Heard testified on, judge determined that they were legitimate. So that's why Johnny lost that case. But he indicated that he was going to continue pursuing a defamation suit against Amber for her Washington Post op-ed. So I think that also was part of WB's decision making, is they didn't want somebody who was going to have to be actively promoting these movies also in the headlines, dealing with this very contentious, very public trial.
Along with all the other negative headlines Fantastic Beasts and J.K. Rowling were facing.
Yeah, they didn't need any more of that. I felt that was important. I will say that after last week's outcome of the case, Amber Heard's original op-ed now features an editor's note after the judge in the defamation suit found portions of it to be defamatory. There definitely has been a shift, I think, in the way that Amber Heard's allegations are being interpreted on the basis of this trial. To kind of get an idea of how engaged we were with the trial, how much of it did y'all watch?
I didn't really watch any of it, honestly. I do have a friend that was very invested. I'm talking watching every day of the trial and then also tuning into a lot of these LawTube breakdowns that were all the rage as well. I know a lot of people got sucked into that too. So obviously, even though I wasn't fully paying too much attention to what was going on, I was definitely getting like play-by-play recaps that I was skimming through. But obviously, it's not that I don't trust this person's opinion, but you always have to take somebody's play-by-play with a grain of salt unless you're actually like hearing both sides and stuff like that. And there was an obvious lean there to what that person felt like should be the verdict that was reached. So that definitely gets tricky as well. But in a lot of ways, even if you weren't trying to watch this trial, it was impossible to escape.
Yeah, because everybody was talking about it on social. Though I do want to ask, Pam, why was your friend invested in the trial? Were they a big Depp fan or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Lifelong.
Notice how Pam talks a little quieter when she's talking about this person? Are you embarrassed?
No, I'm not. But I just don't want, like, I don't know. I was trying to spare them or this person from, because people have such strong opinions either way. And I can't tell somebody what to think. Mm-hmm. And we can't do that with anybody. And the court of public opinion is very strong. We've seen it sway towards Amber Heard over the course of the last few years. And now we're seeing it slant towards Johnny Depp. So,
yeah. So like Pam, I didn't really follow it either, though it was hard to avoid on Twitter. I've said before, I'm not a huge TikTok user, so I wasn't getting a lot of that. But all of the attention around it was pretty stunning. I'm continuously surprised by all the attention and love that Johnny Depp gets in general. I have to think some of this is bot activity, because you look at like every Fantastic Beasts post and you see nothing but, I'm not seeing this movie since you let go of Johnny, bring back Johnny, justice for Johnny, etc., etc. These people are so passionate. And I'm not sure I understand why. I get he was good in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. But I think you also have to factor in the fact that his career spans decades, and Johnny Depp was popular even before the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. I think that took him up a notch. Mm-hmm. But Gilbert Grape was huge. Crybaby is really big as well. Like, he had been around. That's why people were so excited when he got cast to do Pirates, which was already a very popular ride. So I don't know. I don't not believe that some of it was bot interference, but I also I don't know if I would say it was like wholly bots, because he's always had a very passionate fan base, and the Pirate stuff, added to that a lot.
Yeah. If you poke around online, you will definitely find interpretations that say, the massive outpouring of support for Johnny had to have been supplemented by bots. We don't know that, right? So maybe somebody out there knows that, but here on this show, we don't know that, right? But what we do know is that on TikTok, the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp had more than 6.8 billion views as of a few days ago, when this Rolling Stone article that I'm pulling it from was published. And the I Stand With Amber Heard tag had just over 2.4 million views. And then on Twitter, some pro-Depp posts received more likes than Heard's entire Twitter following. So she has just north of 200,000 followers, and some pro-Depp tweets received more likes even than that.
Wow.
So it's clear, at the very least, that one of them just has a stronger perception in the public than the other. And I think having a lengthier career does that. We have to remember there's more than a 20-year age difference between these two. They met when she was 22 years old and he was almost 50. So there's quite an age gap. She does not have as lengthy of a resume as he does, for sure. I wanted to ask y'all, though, because we know the public has gone so wild about this case, and it feels like it's really hard to have a conversation about this without encountering some very strong views one way or the other. And they're not just strong views, they're strongly held convictions. And I've seen people get real heated defending whatever position they have on this case. What do we make of everybody's obsession with this? I mean, obviously it's celebrities, it's Hollywood gossip, so there's an element of that I think plays into it. But is there something else that's special about this case that y'all think appealed to people?
Well, in addition to what you said, people love a train wreck. People love watching other people's dramas. This was like a reality television series. And of course, it was very helpful that the judge allowed the entire trial to be televised. It was a perfect storm of elements to create a high-profile trial.
I'm still honestly flabbergasted by the judge's decision to allow this entire trial to be televised, especially when you look at some of the evidence that was brought forth. A lot of these like calls and stuff like that were played to the entire world. It just feels like information that's sensitive enough. We shouldn't be allowed to listen, regardless of what side you're on. That's very, you're talking about people at their lowest point. And the fact that we now get to listen to that and use that as entertainment or water cooler talk is kind of gross.
Yeah, that's how I felt seeing coverage of the whole thing too. So much of what I did see just seemed so private.
I just looked it up quick, and I have a little reporting in terms of why the judge decided to do this. The judge noted that she was getting a lot of media requests, and she had a responsibility to keep the proceedings open to observers. I'm quoting Variety. If cameras were not allowed, she worried that reporters would come to the courthouse, potentially creating a hazardous condition there. And she said, quote, "I don't see any good cause not to do it."
I don't know if I don't really at the end of the day, it's the judge's decision. But yeah, I don't agree with that either. People, like reporters, go to courthouses and stand outside all the time for these high profile cases. What would have been the difference here?
You don't see any good reason not to? You don't see any? None? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is too, is like this all gets really tricky. And again, especially because it is at the discrepancy of the judge ultimately. But a lot of often what factors into this is whether or not they feel like a jury can come to an unbiased decision. And so to then open this entire storm up to the court of public opinion, there's no way that anybody that's sitting on that trial was not hearing about how the public was perceiving the information that was coming out.
Yeah, and you have to think that has to be an immense amount of pressure, especially knowing how intense some fans of each of these actors are. So yeah, I hear you. I'll also point out that Court TVs, they doubled their daytime ratings airing their coverage of this.
Of course they did.
Judge got a kickback.
Yeah. It's the same thing that happened with the OJ trial. Everybody knows how stuff like this goes. They know they're going to make money off of it. But to answer your original question, Laura, I also think that what really kind of, for better or worse, found people like swept up in the idea of what this trial was is that, it is happening in the shadow of the Me Too movement, which has been a really timely topic over the course of the last few years for everybody, especially in the entertainment industry as well. So I definitely think that added to it a lot, in addition to the star power and how public a lot of this had already played out. And then when you like look at like, you know, like the TMZ video that came out before even the op-ed and stuff like that, it's just, yeah, it was a perfect storm, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and I've seen some, and these are op-eds that posit that the general reaction to this case sort of stands as a lashback or a repudiation of the Me Too movement. I don't know how I feel about that. I think on an individual level, it could be. I could see certain individuals using it as a very blatant black and white interpretation of, see, he did nothing and she did everything. Women can be abusers too. But I don't know that I would feel comfortable saying that it is a mass cultural pushback on Me Too. Certainly not a cultural pushback that Me Too hasn't had already. I mean, it's not as though Me Too has not been challenged in multiple ways. But I did want to highlight something that I learned about. So victims advocate Dr. Jessica Taylor, who is a psychologist, forensic psychology, PhD, and author of 2 books on misogyny and abuse, said that she, ever since the outcome of the trial, has already been contacted by hundreds of survivors wishing to retract their public statements that they've made in the press or are pulling out of court cases against their abusers. She says that the verdict, quote, opens the floodgates for future defamation cases. She goes on to say survivors watching this will rethink everything they say out loud about what happened to them and the potential of being sued and dragged through a court process for saying something they know is true, but they could be found guilty of defamation.
Yeah, that's really scary. And that's why nobody should really be celebrating the outcome of this case. And it shouldn't have been turned into a vehicle for entertainment. Like we mentioned TikTok. I saw this TikTok of Lance Bass mocking Amber Heard's testimony. And I saw somebody else bring up the point like, dude, you were in the band with Justin Timberlake who threw Britney Spears under the bus. Please do not enter this group chat because you have no room to talk right now.
Right, exactly. And I think, you know, it's one of these cases where multiple things can be true. If your interpretation, if you feel strongly that Amber Heard was the one and only aggressor in this situation, then you would also have to concede the point that it's bad for survivors. If you feel strongly that Johnny Depp was the aggressor, or if you feel like it was some combination of the two or some sort of mutually abusive relationship, you also have to admit that that outcome isn't good for survivors either. Either way, it puts survivors in a position of feeling extra pressure to justify coming forward and sharing their experiences, and knowing that they'll be taken seriously, right? So this is not good for anyone.
No.
Is the upshot here for me.
Yeah. And where I come down on this is something I think you've mentioned a couple of times now, Laura. They both were doing some messed up things to each other. They both were abusive. Based on what we've heard from this testimony, past evidence, I don't know how you can't come away with that conclusion unless you're just saying, well, one of them is lying. Team Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is doing nothing but lying. I don't know how you could be so sure of that. You can't.
It does really feel like a sports team mentality.
Yeah.
I think
there's compelling evidence on both sides.
And I will say too, you know, I think it's objectively a good thing that the public, or at least the people who are invested in this case, seem to be moving towards the understanding that anyone can be a victim of domestic violence and sexual assault, and that abuse has no gender, that, you know, men and women can both be victims of this. But I think in some ways the fervor of this realization for people, again, led some to this very black and white conclusion of it's either all or nothing. One person is 100% guilty and the other has zero culpability.
Yeah, and we can't look at it that way.
Yeah, it just feels like disingenuous.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
and
Pam.
I was going to say, not to take away from the people that all of this directly affects at the end of the day, which is Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but I just really feel like the witch hunting really needs to stop in terms of the online discourse as well, because like the back and forth I've seen between people on both sides of this debate against each other is awful. Also, all of the calling for mainstream media to, like, you know, the heads of mainstream media to do more or do less is also kind of disheartening as well. I saw somebody suggesting that it wasn't enough that, you know, like the Washington Post, for example, put an editor's note in front of her op-ed and saying that they should have just deleted it altogether, which I don't personally agree with, because erasing history is also not the right move as well, regardless of what transpired as a result of this trial. So yeah, I think everybody kind of just needs to like cool off and and stop attacking each other. I feel like that sounds so lame in hindsight. You know, it's like everybody be nice to each other, but it really, I don't think it solves anything to be screaming at each other from across screens and stuff.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks to the point that human beings should be capable of evolving their opinions and interpretations of things as new evidence comes to light. And with that understanding, I'm wondering how this case is playing out, because it's still ongoing. I think Amber Heard has a countersuit that she'll be pursuing in the future. Am I right about that?
I don't know.
I believe that was what her lawyer said in an interview recently.
Yeah.
But I haven't really kept up with the media storm that's also happened since the verdict came in, because they've also, I know her team has kind of been doing the rounds for that as well.
Yeah. I don't think that this is the last we're going to hear about these two.
No.
But with the way this case is playing out, do we think that we'll respond to allegations of abuse differently in the future?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, Laura, you're teeing me up for the statement. So just to give everybody some background, when the Johnny Depp allegations started coming out a few years ago at this point, we started writing on Hypable underneath every Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts article, quote, editor's note, Johnny Depp, who co-stars in this film, has been repeatedly accused of acting violently towards others. He allegedly beat his ex-wife Amber Heard, and then we included some links. We also said J.K. Rowling responded to the controversy. In July 2018, Depp was accused of punching a crew member on the set of a film in April 2017, and then we included a link to why we were telling people that. And that link goes to an article about why we had decided that going forward, we were going to start reminding people of the allegations against actors who Hollywood continues to lift up. Too often in Hollywood, allegations come up, evidence comes out, audio clips come out, take the Mel Gibson tapes, for example, and these people do get canceled, sometimes, not all the times, rightfully. But when they are rightfully canceled, Hollywood has a tendency to forget that they were canceled and forget the awful shit that they did. See also Kevin Spacey. All this stuff comes out, everybody's like, shame on you, how dare you, etc. And then we just forget. And they get cast in new projects again. It's happened with Mel Gibson. It's happened with Kevin Spacey. I think, Laura, yes, for me, this was a learning lesson. Would I have maybe, if Hypable was still active today, started putting warnings up or notes about Amber Heard on articles about Amber? Yeah, probably. The thing was, we were covering Johnny Depp quite a bit because he was in Harry Potter movies, which we covered quite a bit. We weren't covering Amber Heard stuff much. We weren't covering Aquaman, etc. And also, I found this quote when I was researching for today, this quote from Viola Davis back in 2017, and we included this in these editor notes that we did with Johnny Depp, our statements on Johnny Depp. Viola Davis said, "The predator wants your silence. The media can no longer grant them that benefit. And that's something to keep in mind. The media just moves the fuck on. So I was tired of it, and that's why we started having those statements about Depp.
Yeah. I think it's a fair point to bring up that, again, Amber Heard's career was not and will never be comparable to Johnny Depp's career. So it's natural that any kind of entertainment site might reference him more than her, at least at that time, before all of this controversy really got stirred up. But yeah, I mean, I think for myself, I remember taking the allegations really seriously. And that's not something I think should change. I think they should be taken seriously. In retrospect, I do think that there would have been some value to saying, let's keep an eye on this and see what comes of it. Just because a lot more information has come out since then. There are definitely multiple cases, to your point, Andrew, of Johnny Depp being accused of physical violence, not just towards Amber Heard. And it seems like that is the spin that is being put on the story nowadays, is that nobody else has ever accused Johnny Depp of violence, and that's not true. But we also acknowledge that Amber Heard has been accused of being physically violent towards a partner before. So I think being patient, and what I think, Andrew, you said this before, like you put a pin in the person, right? And you don't forget what the allegations have been, and you keep it in mind and you stay up to date on it.
Yeah.
And then you kind of watch and see, especially for people like us who are, we're members of the public. None of us are ever going to meet Johnny Depp or Amber Heard, probably. So I think it would definitely behoove all of us not to feel the temptation to be the first to hop on a hot take. Not to say that that's what we were doing, but I think the internet culture does.
It encourages it.
It conditions people to think that that's the way that we do discourse, I think is what I'm trying to say.
That's social media. It's like social media is about what's happening now, and it demands that you add your feedback now. I mean, literally right at the top of Twitter, it's like, what's happening? Give us your thoughts on everything now. We don't care if they make sense or not, if they're factually correct or not. Get your thought posted quick.
Well, speaking of public hearings, we know of one that's coming up that we really hope people are going to be invested in. And that is the January 6th commission hearings kicking off this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Are you all going to be there? I'm going to be there.
Yeah, I'm actually excited about this. I just love that they're televising it during prime time. What is it, 8 p.m. Eastern? I think that's really funny. Fight fire with fire. I mean, this is the type of crap that Republicans would love to pull if they could. So I'm all in on it. I'm bringing the popcorn. I'm calling Domino's. I'm going to have some pizza. I'm not actually going to celebrate all this, but I am going to tune in, though. I want to see how they make a spectacle out of it. And please do make it a spectacle. Republicans get away with so much crap.
If it's prime time, I feel like that's what we deserve, right?
Yeah, please. Some grandiose statements like Ted Cruz would make, and
bring racist baby with you as a talking point.
Do you think babies are racist? Apparently, the committee is going to be showing some previously never before seen evidence that they think
coming up at 9.
Yeah.
Meryl Streep will introduce some previously never before seen footage.
Yeah. So apparently the thought is that it will be shocking to the public. But I think, if for no other reason, it's history. We have to watch it. And we can never forget that there was, a violent insurrection that happened in this country's capital less than 2 years ago.
Is Ryan Seacrest hosting? Who is the host of this primetime event?
Lester Holt.
Lester Holt, boring. I need a star. Give me Ryan Seacrest. I hate Ryan Seacrest. Give me Kelly Clarkson.
Howard Stern.
Howard Stern.
Well, one outlet that we know actually won't be covering it is Fox News, right, Andrew?
Yes, Fox News has announced they will not be airing the hearings. They will be airing them on Fox Business, but not on Fox News. They have very important episodes of Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity to air. And of course, people were quick to react to this development. Sawyer Hackett said Fox News ran 1,098 primetime segments on Benghazi from the day of the attack until the committee hearings, which they carried live for more than 7 hours. And Hillary Clinton said, in response to this news, Fox News won't air the January 6 hearings because they prefer their sedition made fresh on sites.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I was going to say, they can't cover it because so many of their news anchors would be reporting on something that they were part of.
That's true. Yeah, like Sean Hannity was texting Donald Trump Jr. or vice versa, like, get your dad to calm down or something like that.
Yeah, not just him. I mean, Laura
They're
Ingraham.
all implicated.
Yeah, they were all texting Mark Meadows.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
do something. He's ruining. I think Laura was like, he's ruining his legacy.
Yeah. Talk about a conflict of interest that I didn't think we would see.
Talk about how they all ignore that they sent these text messages. I hope those text messages get brought up during the hearing tomorrow.
I hope so too.
Oh man, CNN's going to lean into the live coverage. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. Yeah.
No, they're moving past that now, right?
They are
using
it less.
It's one more for the road. One more breaking news for the road.
Well, this is breaking news. Like, it is a live event. They're going to stop using breaking news when they say something's breaking news, but it actually happened like 8 hours ago. Okay, so before we get to one more topic today, just wanted to plug our Patreon. We kicked off a 3-part series last week. We were initially calling these more of a family-friendly, like all about Pam. And we accidentally came up with a new title at the end of last week's After Dark, Deep Dive into Pam. And this week we have part 2, Deep Dive into Andrew. But here's a quick review of last week's Deep Dive. This was from patron Allison. They said, I loved the After Dark deep dive into Pam. She's a bit of a mystery I've loved hearing more about. You know what this means, Pam? We got to do a part 2. We got to reveal more about you.
Sounds good.
Oh, look at this team player. I'm just kidding for now. But yeah, so this week's After Dark is all about me. Laura and Pam are going to put me in the hot seat and ask some questions about my life and how I got to where I am today, stuff like that. So you can find that at patreon.com/millennial. Then we'll do a deep dive into Laura next week. Thanks to everybody who supports us. We couldn't do this without you. We really couldn't. Patreon.com/millennial. We're so lucky to have listeners and so lucky to have patrons. We love y'all. And if you can't support us financially, that's okay. We understand. It's hard out there. But if you can make sure you're following the show for free in your favorite podcast app, if you can leave a review, if you can tell a friend about the show, it all is really helpful. And of course, use those sponsor codes. So if I told you the world is so gloomy that people are reducing the amount they put into savings each month and instead they're YOLOing it up, what would you say to that? Spending more, saving less. Do you think that's a good idea?
No, but I get it.
Would you do it? Would you do it today, tomorrow?
I would have to find out that the world was actually going to blow up soon. I would need to know the expiration date.
Like an Armageddon situation, but without Bruce Willis blowing up the asteroid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
then I would do it.
I get that.
YOLO,
I'm too anxious to subscribe to this way of life because what if the world doesn't end?
Right.
So maybe that makes me an optimist.
Well, look, I mean, let's just jump to the end of this. The world's not going to end. So people got to let go of this attitude. I'm asking this question because there was this new profile in the New York Times about some people. Many adults under 35 have stopped playing it safe. Instead of banking as much of their pay as they used to, they're saving less, spending more, and pursuing passion projects or risky careers. Quote, for some, like Miss Narang, the isolation of pandemic life triggered the decision to enjoy the moment, financial consequences be damned. For others, the motivation has come from worries over climate change, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, domestic political instability, soaring inflation, through-the-roof housing costs, and a topsy-turvy stock market. And people like Miss Narang and others are traveling more. Like I said, they're saving less. They're buying things they normally wouldn't buy because they feel like there's no tomorrow. And I do find this pretty irresponsible. I guess I get it, but can you really not see into the future if you feel this way? These people are moving to much more expensive cities.
I feel like there's a happy middle ground here that you can reach without just like burning all your money. I've talked before about how my mom works in banking and stuff, and she does deal with like an older clientele as well, who are now only starting to realize that they've saved more than they actually probably need to like make a living because, they clearly are loaded, which is great. Yeah. But it's like, that's how I feel every time she talks about this too. And their philosophy is like, well, you can't take it with you. And in some cases I agree, because unfortunately in the United States, we're a very like work oriented society. We've sort of been like programmed to think that like, we just need to like work and save. And because one day we won't be able to work or save. And so I think that you should like treat yourself every once in a while and maybe like save up to take that trip. Yeah, I think that that's really healthy. But I also think that there's like a way to do that without just like completely going broke.
Yeah.
Because you're just like continuing to spend without actually like saving anything at all.
I totally agree with that. Work should not be your life. I can see why some people would start living this way. If you are looking at the media headlines, so much of it is doom and gloom, and that is partly by design. They want to scare you so you'll actually read the articles. And if you're watching a lot of the news and you're seeing a lot of the bad news on social media, it all consumes you. And you're like, you have like this moment you see in the movies where you quit the job and you hop on a bus and you head to the West Coast and finally live the life you've been dreaming of. But it just seems very irresponsible. And I worry about these people.
Yeah, me too. But, Pam, you mentioned, your mom working with some folks who have been successful, it sounds like, with their retirement savings, which is great. And that's what I want for all of us. But we talked about this several weeks ago, I think. As a generation, boomers are not ready for retirement. Many of them have not saved enough for retirement. And I think for younger generations, that calls into question whether we're actually going to be able to retire. So I can understand. I don't think it's a good idea. Let me go on the record and say that. I think it's a bad idea, but I can understand why somebody who's younger and is maybe looking at parents who are not prepared for retirement and is looking at the current state of our economy and wondering, how am I going to be able to get ahead of this massive curve so that I can be prepared for retirement? Do I want to bust my ass making that happen? Or do I want to enjoy my life now while I can?
Yeah.
And while I can still travel and while I can still do things and live in all kinds of crazy places that you can't really do when you're older. So I understand it. I get where people are coming from.
I agree with all that. Just try to make some good decisions along the way. Make an investment that's going to pay off. But speaking of like living in the now before things disappear, I was wondering if you two have ever looked at the gloomy state of a certain aspect of the world. It doesn't have to be the world on a whole, but something more specific and prioritized differently in light of the negative outlook. For example, for me, we've spoken, I think we last spoke about this a few months ago. There's a mega drought happening on the western half of the US. And one very important water source is the Colorado River. I have found myself feeling the urge to explore more areas of the Southwest and specifically areas along the Colorado River while there's still enough water in the Colorado River. Really good example of just how things have changed so dramatically in the past few years. There was this area of Glen Canyon National Recreation Area fed by the Colorado River called Lone Rock. And I drove by it back in 2017. It was this giant rock in the middle of the water. And you drive by it and you're like, whoa, cool. That's a giant rock just sticking out of the middle of the water. You don't see something like that every day. I continued driving by, and that was that. I drove by this on New Year's Day this past month. It wasn't a lone rock anymore. There was no water around it.
Oh my God.
It's a rock just standing up, a giant cliff standing up in the dirt. And it's really sad how such a beautiful, dramatic piece of Glen Canyon could dramatically change in just 5 years. If you look at, I have a picture here actually for you two to look at if you want. But if you look at a before and after, you can see how it used to be surrounded by water and now it's just surrounded by sand. And it's just a really good illustration of how things have changed. It's sad.
That is sad.
Again, that's 5 years. 5 years have passed. That's why we got to start exploring the Colorado River now. Anyway,
Yep.
any
Gotta
horrible
find all
things
those
like
bodies
that?
and barrels.
Right. Yeah. I got to turn them in and stuff.
So it's not quite the same insofar as, wanting to see something before it goes toes up. But my approach towards my student loans is I just don't believe that we're ever going to get fair repayment terms for our loans. I'm not personally, I've talked about this on the show before. I would love it if student loan forgiveness happened. I don't really think that it will in any kind of complete way, like wiping the slate clean for everyone. And I'm personally okay with that. I'm happy to pay off my loans. It's going to take me, most of the rest of my life to do it. But all I ask for is fair repayment terms. However, I don't think it's going to happen. So my approach towards paying my student loans is I just pay the government, $300 a month to not wreck my credit. And I've accepted that. I'm like, I just pay the government money to not fuck up my credit. And that's just how I'm going to roll with it. I know it's kind of fatalist, but with the interest being what it is, I'm not incentivized to try and get ahead on it because I don't want to throw my money at interest.
Well, I could definitely relate to both of you for sure.
Liza brought up one I'm sure you can relate to, Pam. All the wildfires out west. You got to see some of these national parks and some of the beautiful forests in California before some of those burn down.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them areas of these parks already have, which is extremely sad.
I mean, I'll tell you that a lot of the, we're still seeing damages. There's still areas up in wine country specifically where those areas have not recovered yet from fires that happened, 6 years ago, which is crazy. And it really kind of puts into perspective just how long it takes for the earth to repair itself. And that's also disheartening because then you think about how a lot of this could be presented if the entire world was more serious about global warming issues.
All right. Well, that is that. Just try to save a little bit, y'all. Invest in yourselves in some financial ways if you can. Prioritize those to an extent. But also, yes, live your life. Just keep it all in balance.
Yeah. I know this is going to sound so cliche, but if you're on the younger side, in your early 20s, early to mid 20s, if you start putting away $10 a week and just make that a habit, you'll be surprised how quickly it adds up.
Yep.
I wish I had done that.
Me too. I love using Stash to auto invest. You can pick whatever amount you want. $1, $5, $10. You can pick any interval you want. A week, a month, every other month, different intervals. Just let that money automatically move in an amount that you can afford each week, each month, each year. And like Laura's saying, it'll add up over time. In terms of recommendations this week, at least I think we all shared recommendations earlier. If you have any feedback about today's episode, you can email millennialshow@gmail.com, or you can use the contact form or anonymous confessional on millennialshow.com. You can also follow us on our social media channels. We are Millennial Show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And then over on TikTok, we are Millennial Pod. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.